Hello folks, I've had a couple of people asking me about the Canary's whistle language. So I'll see if I can go over a few of the things that might be interesting about this form of communication and how easy or otherwise it is to learn. Um, the whistle language I use is the one based on Spanish here in the Canary Islands. There are also similar, for not to say identical, systems used with Turkish. There's a little village called Kuskay where practically all the villagers whistle as well as speak. They whistle for longer distance communication, obviously, just like here in the Canaries. And also in Greece, there's a little island, I forget the name of it, where there's a village where the locals whistle. Not so many nowadays, but it's well documented. Those two, the Turkish one and the Greek one, are well documented with lots of sound samples, etc. And it's quite clear that it's the same system that we use, the same system of whistling used to imitate the spoken words that we use here in the Canaries. The same system was also used in the south of France, in a tiny little village near the city of Pau in the Pyrenees. And this is now being revived, and actually really has been revived, because there are now many people, a certain number of people in these villages who now are fluent whistlers. And also, less documented, but certainly known and being somewhat documented, are people living in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. Shepherds mostly, I believe, which is where probably the whistlers here, or the original whistle in the Canary Islands came from, we would imagine, with the population who came over many hundreds, more like thousands of years ago, from that part of mainland Africa. So, to learn the whistle language, is it easy? Is it not? Well, to learn the whistle language is pretty easy. The thing is, you also, in order to use it effectively or practically, you need to know one of the substrate languages. In my case, I only know Spanish, so whenever I whistle, I'm whistling in Spanish, because it seems that nobody whistles in English, probably due to the large number of, what I mean is, there's no population we know of who use the English language and whistle in that language to each other, because the vowels in English are probably too many and too flexible in order for not for the whistler to whistle them, but in order for the listener to pick them up and distinguish them. Whereas Spanish has very few vowels, Turkish has fairly few vowels, and they use harmony, which probably ties in the whistling to make it a bit easier. And what was the other one? Greek has, I think, 6 or 7 vowels, maybe 8, not many. And the language they use in the south of France to whistle is not French, because French, it would seem, probably has too many vowels as well. It's like English, it has over a dozen vowels. Whereas the local language they use in the Pyrenees, which they now again whistle in just like they did in the past, is a language, a member of the group of Oc languages, which has, I guess, 6 or 7 vowels, quite close to Spanish. So, yes, if you speak one of these languages, for example, Spanish, well then you're way ahead of the game in order to start whistling. However, if you don't speak them, you can still learn to whistle, learn the techniques, and then all that's holding you back is then you've got to go ahead and learn Spanish. Which, why not? You could learn them both more or less at the same time. There's no rule that says you've got to learn one before the other. You can learn to whistle and then learn Spanish and whistle as you go. There are many different techniques used to whistle. The ones that are practical for communication you have 2 requirements. They should be loud in order to reach long distances, and they should allow for articulation of sounds. In other words, that you can use the many different organs of the mouth to full advantage, lips, tongue, palate, cheeks, all that kind of thing. The most common whistle probably in the world is the pursed lip whistle, this one. It's not ideal. It's probably not good enough for practical, useful language whistling. There are many other types, techniques which do work. The ones that I use are with 0 fingers, and with 1 finger, which is a classical posture used, especially in gomero, where most of the whistlers are. Especially nowadays, most gomero people whistle with any one of the fingers of their good hand, or the thumb. Generally, it's first or second finger recently. It seems to have kind of become standardized, and that is the stance that looks the best, it looks the most conventional. And then they would use their second hand as kind of an amphitheater here. And what else I want to say? Yes, so to learn to whistle, you can learn the technique like that. I could go through, or any whistler could go through what you do, the actual characteristics of what is exactly going on when you do this. Showing where the finger sits on the tongue, where the tongue goes, how you move your mouth, where the ear comes out, where the ear turns into sound, or produces a sound, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the other one, which I use with no fingers, which is a slightly different technique, but it has very similar results. And then there are many people who use 2 fingers, like so, or like so. There are many people who use 3 or 4 fingers to whistle. You've all seen people whistle like this. I don't do it because I don't need it, because I've got this one. Probably very similar in results, in effect, and all sorts. One of my whistling friends here in the Canaries started whistling, and within a month he was one of the best whistlers. He was in a group that I used to go up the mountains and hills and on all these walks with, and he had the strangest posture I've ever seen. Something like this. I think it was like this. I don't know if it was like this, but he seemed to tie his arms and knots every time he had to whistle, which was a little bit inconvenient when you're walking along the mountain and maybe you've got a stick and you'd have to put down the stick and hold and go about his whistle, which shows how convenient the no finger whistle is to have as well as a finger whistle. If, for example, you're working in the fields, or if you're carrying something, or you're otherwise occupied, or if your hands are dirty, you can whistle with the no fingers at all, once you've got the technique down. So if anyone wanted to learn to whistle, I could go through those techniques and show you how it's done, and then you just gotta learn Spanish, or Turkish, or Greek, or Berber, or Occitan, or whichever language you can find that suits the whistle. There's a bunch of other stuff that I could talk about, but it's not occurring to me now. And I see this video is coming up to like 9 minutes, and people are trying to contact me. So I'll leave it at that for now, and anybody who has any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll do another video on this subject or whatever other subject people would be interested in. That's all. Anybody who wants to whistle, I might be the best way to get you started. Feel free to contact me, and we'll organise a session anytime you want, in English or in Spanish. Okay, folks, thank you very much. Talk soon. Bye bye.